Hi, I'm Andy Schmuckler. I've always had a affinity for the idea of really honest communication. Um, in my life history during a period when I was sort of a dropout, um, that I became involved in the encounter group movement that was basically about the idea that we can have really good human relationships by saying what's really true about what we think and feel. Um, the group was supposed to provide an environment where people could try out that kind of honesty and discover that it works. That you can get to a good place with people uh, that is impossible to do when you're sort of hiding from each other. And I, I became a leader of encounter groups, and then I became a trainer of encounter group leaders. This was in Berkeley in the late 60s. In the time just leading up to my beginning to have something actually to say about what's happened to our species. So, unfortunately, it turns out that it doesn't always work to be open and honest, but out of fear of how people might think of me, I mean, this is just my own little arena of this. Is how, one thing I've hidden, except from people with whom I'm close, is my sense that's contained in the introductory piece I've written to a series that I've posted on Daily Costs, outlining my uh, better human story. It's titled An Introduction to a Big Picture View that might help human civilization to survive. Well, uh, that's claiming a lot. And I have not felt comfortable sharing that that's how I see it with very many people. And even with people fairly close to me with whom I share it, I really don't want them to think that I'm grandiose. Hate that idea. So I've kept it hidden, except at moments where it seemed like it was relevant to trying to do what my life's mission has been, which is to convey, starting with the big piece I got in 1970, what I had seen to my fellow human beings, because I thought it could make a difference. And anyway, so I've indicated that I'm looking for some some probably young minds are that would care if what I said was true, and um, both because they care so much about whether human civilization is going to survive or destroy itself, and because understanding is something that they value highly enough that they work at it. And I put myself in the position of hearing this guy make this claim, and I think I imagine a degree of skepticism, because you would expect that if that were true, and if this person has been putting those ideas out into the world as best he can for a long time, and even got, a big book published and reviewed full page in the New York Times, you know. So this guy that I never heard of has put this together, and it's been actually available to the world in some meaningful way since almost 40 years ago. Um, I mean, how likely is that? So either the guy who's making such a claim is can't be trusted to have any idea what the hell he's talking about, or something strange has happened that this has been on offer for 40 years or 53, depending on when you want to start counting. And this guy's still, I mean, he's not a complete failure, but small potatoes. How likely is that to happen? I mean, which is it? Is the guy got delusions of grandeur, or has the world somehow behaved strangely with respect to what's on offer? And if so, why? What does that signify? So which of those two is it? And so I put myself in the position of a listener who's thinking, well, I'd like to know if it's true. I mean, he says he can prove that the ugliness we see in human history is not human nature writ large. He says that any creature anywhere in the cosmos who steps on the path of civilization it inevitably unleash a social evolutionary force that would make the first millennia or whatever of their history as tormented as human history has been. Yeah, if those things were true, I would want to know, but how likely is it that this nobody is offering anything like that? Well, I'm going to practice the honesty that I believe in, and not knowing how well it works in any given situation. I'm going to tell you something about my own inquiry into that question, because the question that the serious viewer of this video might, I'm imagining, would have of, is it worth my spending that this guy says, well, don't jump to any conclusions without first checking it out. Well, that sounds reasonable, but I got only so much time in my life. How much sense it makes for me to check it out depends on what I think the likelihood is of the claim being valid. If it's 1 in 100, but if it's pretty decent, then I want to check it out. So I've been in a position like that because I grew up really expecting that the world rewards merit. And I worked real hard to show merit of the kind that gets rewarded all the time. I don't mean so much being a good boy, though I was that too. I mean, I just always strove to do my best and be told that I'd done excellently. For the first 21 years of my life, everything indicated that that's how the world worked. And the better my work, the better the rewards of my merit were, all the way up to, well, I'm supposed to be honest here. Well, I'm thinking about when I was 21. I graduated from Harvard with highest honors, summa cum laude, which means like the upper 1.5% of the Harvard class. And I had worked very hard to earn that, but had basically done it by writing what they considered a publishable book about tragic drama in ancient Greece and Elizabethan England, addressing the question, why uh, did those tragedies blossom as an art form at those particular times and places? What were the social issues being dealt with that led to that? And what were the psychological issues being dealt with? So the thing was called A Psychology of Heroic Tragedy. And that plus, I worked very hard to do it. It was a labor of love, but I was also anxious about just performing really well. And I got all the rewards for that I could have wanted. 3 years later, I get the first big piece of this Better Human Story, the piece called The Parable of the Tribes. I don't see it up there. And, oh, here it is. I wanted to be able to show it. Here's the book that really represents my calling. So 3 years later, I get this idea that leads me to do something that might help human civilization survive. It was way beyond what I had done as a serious and highly motivated Harvard undergraduate. It was just at a completely different level. And it made life very difficult for me for years thereafter. But I pursued it. And I found that the world's evaluation was not so automatically connected with merit. But still, I had grown up with so much belief that what the world says is the verdict. So I found myself, as the parable of the tribes disappeared unrefuted from the world, put into this position where I was asking myself basically that same question. Have I been deluding myself? Do I know what I'm talking about when I feel like I'm saying here something that's really has the possibility of putting into an importantly different light a pretty irrefutable argument that shows our nature, our story, and our challenges into a fundamentally different light? Am I deluding myself? And if I'm not, how did that happen? That wasn't the way the world was supposed to work. In all those 14 years when I had this thing I wanted to convey, and I imagined if only I could get it out, I mean, that would do it. That was my assumption. And then when it didn't do it, it didn't require the world to deal with it. And if not refute it, then adjust the thinking so that we're suddenly seeing the human story in a different way. That the secular worldview has been expanded to include certain dimensions of things that correct problems we've got in our present secular understanding, inadequacies in some extent, and also, as it turns out, some holes in the secular worldview, holes that the religious views of old didn't leave vacant, but are dangerously vacant anyway. What would it say about the world? But then there would be these times when I would so deeply question myself that there was one occasion when I got into a personal crisis, deeply painful. Some letter written to me as "Dear Author" somehow triggered such a feeling of failure to get it at that stage of my career. I got together 15 of my friends who know me pretty well and know my work pretty well, and created a sort of online forum to help me through what was really probably the most intense crisis of its sort that I'd ever experienced. I'm not sure I can explain. I had to deal with rejection a lot along the way. Uh, you know, it was a struggle as soon as I left the beaten trail, life that had delivered all the options that I ever wanted, all the fellowships and scholarships and all that kind of stuff. It was suddenly very hard to be awarded anything. So was I deluding myself? And I would ask myself, because if you absorb, in a sense, the world's verdict in a way that I had sort of become addicted to doing when I was younger and never could entirely kick the habit, there would be times of asking myself, taking a look at myself and asking, do I have delusions of grandeur here? So here's the honest me, the way I've thought it through, or part of the way I've thought it through. As far as I can tell, I've got more vanity than I would wish to have, but nothing grotesque. Um, I'm a bit self-important. I'm the star of my own movie, but then everybody is, and I don't know, there's anything particularly unusual about me in those kinds of ways. And when I look over my life and the various ambitions I've had, and and my own, and I'm not given to uh, narcissistic self-deception. Uh, I was an ambitious kid, wanted to be great at everything. Um, for a while, it looked like maybe I could be great as an athlete, but as the pond got bigger, it turned out that the kid that had dreams of being a professional athlete um, wasn't going to be any better than a decent varsity high school athlete. Um, Not good enough to play at the college level, let alone the pro. I, I think I was pretty graceful about absorbing that news as things moved along. I know that I'm not gorgeous. I'm not. I don't look like a Hollywood leading man, but it's not unpleasant to look at. Um, I've when I look at myself, evaluating myself, and I do it. Um, it's a habit I wouldn't mind having less of. Um, it looks to me like there's an honest guy at work here. So if I'm not deluding myself, well, then you could ask, well, are you somebody who would be able to judge a thing like this? And here's where I'm giving myself permission to say something, which you couldn't have a better background for making that kind of a judgment. Um, I mean, I feel like life is not given me as much as I deserve of certain things, but it has, uh, I am so grateful that it couldn't have given me more of an opportunity, um, both to be able to understand the nature of the genre that I'm in and to understand what the quality of something in that genre is. My dad, he was a professor of economics, but he was really a social thinker. And his idea and mine of a good time together was to go out driving in the farmland of Minnesota within reach of our suburban St. Paul home and enjoy the land while discussing French civilization and English civilization, um, Marx's ideas about this or that. And, um, this is the guy I grew up with in the house, um, and and with whom I got close by having these kinds of conversations, which he enjoyed and I enjoyed, and and then I went off to college and worked with some of the um, best minds in the country in psychological and sociological, anthropological, historical, um, economic uh, dimensions. Uh, what one year, then I go off to be a graduate student at the University of Chicago as a PhD candidate with the Committee on Social Thought and Clinical Psychology, and jointly. Um, it was it was after that I became a dropout, and ever since then, I've been basically on my own path. I lost my way for a couple of years there, as I tell in a different video. But when I found my path, but up until that time, oh, and 1 year at Yale, where I studied in a pretty fine American Studies program, I I had basically been bred and educated to be able to flesh out my thinking with the likes of oh, Tocqueville, Democracy in America, and John Locke, and Thomas Hobbes, and Machiavelli, and Marx, and Weber, and Durkheim, and Freud, and all those lesser social thinkers. That was what I was trained to be able to know what's out there. So when I claim to have put something together that does this, I do it as somebody who is trained to know. And I generally have come around, even during painful moments of self-doubt, because how could the world not deal with this? I come around to thinking that I do know what I'm talking about. And so when I say something, when I'm aspiring to get out into the thinking of the culture, um, in in the same way that a couple of other thinkers' ideas I've seen get out, and I don't know that anything more than what Marx and Freud achieved is possible. I'd take it if I could get it, but you know, ideas only get adopted to whatever extent, and I haven't even achieved that extent. So, but when I claim that, I think I know what I'm talking about. And it is awkward to say that. So I see no reason why, if you would want to know if the claims were valid, and you're somebody who'd be willing to do whatever the work is of checking it out to find out if it's so, I think it's a very sound bet to invest the time to check it out. I don't see any reason to imagine that there's something crazy about the idea. So, thank you. I'll be back with whatever the next piece is of laying out this better human story that I think can help make our secular worldview more capable of enabling us to see what we got to do and motivating us to do it. Thank you. Bye-bye.